Hey guys, this is Stacy with SF Johnson Consulting and Construction Services. And I know that a lot of you work on renovations. And there are a lot of things about a renovation that you need to add. And I'm really adamant on making sure you get the labor and man hours that you're actually working. And so in this video, I want to go over or just discuss some of the things that I've jotted down here that I will be reading from, um, to give you some clues on what you should think about when you are performing a renovation. Renovations, of course, are we're uh, working on an existing building. We're pulling out some stuff, kitchens, bathroom, whatever, and you always have to be more careful when you are renovating someone's business or home as opposed to new construction from the ground up. You don't have to worry about as much because there's a process where it should make things or the construction easy. We work from the shell outward, and then we don't have to worry about damaging existing drywall, flooring, whatever. And so these are some of the things you want to think about. Maybe you want to jot these down. And if you are any part of any of our member spaces, which is a monthly service I provide where I give you tips, in depth tips about your trade, study videos for you to keep. And if you are a YouTube subscriber, when you go to our website, sfjohnsonconsulting.com, go to member spaces and use YouTube 24, and you'll get what is normally $9.99 a month. You'll get half off for an entire year, and I think it would be well worth it. There I upload man-hour calculators, video study videos, and anything in particular that you want to study that you need assistance with. Okay, so again, if this is something you want to do, I know since COVID, tons of new contractors have gone out there on their own, and it's just, you know, GCs know a new contractor when they see one, and they know how to play one when they know one. And so I try to avoid all that. I started as a construction defect litigation adjuster and helping contractors, and it just evolved into this business that I've been now for 15 years. Okay, so renovations, different than new construction. And so these are some of the things you want to think about. So we're talking about your labor productivity, meaning your man hour totals and adding and subtracting. I'm sorry. People are silly. Adding and subtracting from that. And so some of the things you want to think about. So these conditions differ from new construction in many ways, but a few of the most common conditions are these. So number one, you may have difficulty matching the existing work. Depending on the year of the building or the home or whatever, it may no longer exist as it is. And so think about that and what would be required for you to match it. So you may have to spend more time searching for materials that do match. You may have to create something on your own that matches. Okay. And so you want to think about that when you are discussing the project with the homeowner. And this is pretty much for homeowner kind situations. You want to discuss that. Say, hey, if we have difficulty matching what you have existing, it'll be an additional cost. Or let's just start fresh. How's that? That's always a good thing. Better for you, and really better for them, right? It leaves consistency. So that's number one. Okay, number two is access problems. Even in my home here, my son had to run some stuff, access problems. A vent pipe, bought a flipped home. If you buy a flipped home, just know you're going to have to work on it. So either get everything fixed, get an inspector that actually inspects, okay, and doesn't take your $450 and they don't inspect. They just, oh yeah, we turned on the air conditioner and cold air came out. Okay, so you're going to have to do stuff. And so I say that to say access problems. The plumber couldn't get to the pipe where the flipper flipped and there was nowhere to get. So we had to cut into the wall. Okay. And so, yeah, access problems, additional time, additional labor, additional material in most cases to put everything back the way it was. Now I have a plumber that needs to put in drywall. Okay, that those things typically don't go together. Okay, so that's a different trade or a really good plumber. All right, so access problems, number two. Number three, materials that must be carefully shaped and attached than is typical in new construction. So again, if you've got an old home, vintage home, vintage this, that, you got to do some special stuff to make it look like Cheesecake Factory. Well, additional time and material. Okay, number three, materials that must be carefully designed and placed to basically match the existing. Number four, you'll find this in a lot of older homes, out of plumb or not square wall structures, whatever. And so you have to take care of that. How do you want to take care of that? Okay, that's number four. Number five, reinforcing. That's important. So if you got to cut into the exterior wall because they want French doors, two sets that are 16 feet wide. So both sets of wheelchairs can fit through them. Well, you got to reinforce that exterior wall, right? So the whole building doesn't fall down. And so, under those circumstances, make the homeowner get a real architect, okay, and a real structural engineer. So when the house does fall down, they don't blame you because, you got a couple 2x4s to hold it up and it's a 2-story building. Don't do it. Okay, so reinforcing, that's real important depending on the scope of work. Okay, and especially new GCs, if you're out there cutting into the roof or the exterior walls, okay, or any interior structural wall, it must be reinforced before you cut into it, change it, whatever you think, whatever the homeowner wants to do. And so that's why it's real important to get permits, and it's very important to get architects and real plans, because soon as everything starts falling, they're going to sue you. Okay, so that's a big one. Number five, reinforcement. This is a big one I had a few years ago. Number six, going trips back and forth to Home Depot or wherever, the granite store. Okay, so more trips and effort are required to find material in the case of a renovation. Okay, and so charge them for that time or put in the contract. And of course, contracts. Don't do any of this without a contract. Okay, and that's number six, time looking for material. Or the owner wants to get all the material, right? And half of it is wrong. And so make sure you have a provision for that too. Okay, so 7, much more time and travel required because most jobs will have a relatively small amount of work. So yeah, renovate. That's why a lot of, even on commercial jobs, when it's just little stuff here and there, uh, the time required to get around for a small job, depending on the state you're in too. Okay, so time when it's a small, and remember, renovations could be anything, but you may be required to go a long distance to do it. And one thing to always know, whether it's residential or commercial, for most, like, let's start with commercial. For most jobs, if there's a invitation to bid and they send it to you and you respond to it, okay, 9 times out of 10, it's not in your neighborhood. And so you are, it's understood that, they're not paying for hotel and per diem and all of that. Okay. So don't just because you had a job last year and now you're a GC, you think you should get You think you should get per diem and travel and hotel, and you don't get that. They don't offer that, but they well, in some circumstances, and that's why I'm trying to differentiate the circumstance from which, yeah, you can ask for that. If a GC asks you in particular to do a job, and the GC knows that you're in Houston, but the job is in Dallas, right? They're far away, or California. They know you're in Sacramento, but the job is in LA and they want you to do it. Well, then, yeah, you should ask them for room, board, per diem for your crew. And, it'd be like a Motel 6 kind of situation, okay? Or a nice place where you can eat breakfast, okay? So, yeah, you can do that under those circumstances. So that's one of those, I got to go a long way to do nothing. Well, if they agree for that, then yeah, you can charge them mileage. You can charge them all that stuff. Okay, so let's see. Anything else that's more important? Because if you are a member services fan, you have all of these in detail, including whatever questions you may have. So let me see. Where's my cursor? Here we go. And then, just like with any project, if there are unexpected things that happen or something that anything, just like it's a change order, but in terms of renovation, in most cases, if it's residential, it's more like time and material. And yeah, you got to give them a whole new estimate and the amount of time. And if you work with me, you definitely will be able to determine the amount of time it's going to take you to do any scope of work. Okay. And that is very important. That separates the men from the boys in construction. If you know how long your job is going to take, and I mean, you're not guessing, you actually know, and it's on paper, and you can point out the rough end work is going to take this long, and the finished work is going to take this long. If you actually know how to do that, then you're separating yourself from the boys, and you are a professional, and that's what I teach. Okay, and so when it comes to renovations, I'm going to stop right here because we can't go past. Oh, that's 12 minutes, Lord. That's a little too long, but valuable information. So if you liked it, please let me know. Like, subscribe, join. If you have any question related to your scope of work, can't get an answer anywhere, email me at education@sfjohnsonconsulting.com. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time. Ask any question. There are no dumb questions, but there are plenty of dumb people in construction messing stuff up because they don't ask questions. See you soon.